So here we are again, presented with Hideo Kojima's next wonderful Metal Gear sort of vision, and this one is looking very, very interesting. So basically, set straight after Peace Walker, so that's probably about 30 years after the original Metal Gear Solid. So really interesting time period that we haven't really explored before, and it's basically setting Big Boss up on this big grand adventure, and we don't really know much more than that. So I'm interested. I'm always interested by Kojima. You know, I'm always up for some Metal Gear goodness, and I think this one's going to be the most controversial one yet.
It could be. I mean, what I always love about Kojima games is that they sort of subvert what you think you're going to get from them. They always have a great sense of humor, which is often disguised when they're showing gameplay and trailers. You don't necessarily see that straight away.
Yeah.
But usually you get sort of 2, 3, 4 hours into the game, and then suddenly you're surrounded by Metal Gear in jokes and little references to previous titles. And I think that's that humor and that personality that he manages to imbue his games with that always make them so popular.
Yeah, totally. And I think with this one, they're trying so many different ideas that it's hard not to be sort of impressed and excited by the stuff Konami and Kojima Productions is doing. I mean, for example, just the way they're marketing this game. So you've got Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, which is what this trailer's for. And then you've also got Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Now, how those two are going to be split up and distributed, we're not actually sure just yet. But as it looks, Ground Zeroes is going to be a prologue, sort of easing you into the new open world that Phantom Pain is going to take you into. So from what we've heard from Kojima, it's going to be about, I think it's 1/300th of the size of Phantom, which just sounds insane. That's too big. Like, that's going to, like, I don't even know how small that's going to make GTA look, but I'm really up for that, you know. And obviously Snake can now travel around on motorbikes and helicopters, and that sounds pretty cool, I guess. And we've seen Ocelot riding around on a horse. I want a horse. Is that something I want? I think I do.
I think it sounds like you do. I think it'd be interesting to see how that integrates into the traditional Metal Gear stealth gameplay. Like,
yeah,
you know, how stealthy can you be in a Jeep? We don't know. Hopefully we'll find out. Some of the gameplay footage we've seen suggests that actually there is still a lot of stealth that can be achieved in a Jeep. You just have to be very smart about how you move about, where you drive. Presumably costumes will come into play as they always do in Metal Gear.
As they always do. I think one thing that's interesting is, obviously, there was a load of gameplay footage that came out of Tokyo Game Show, where Kojima himself demonstrated the sort of new look of Metal Gear, and it's getting a lot of comparison to Splinter Cell, which I can't decide, is that fair? Is that founded in anything? Or is that just Metal Gear fans once again throwing their toys out of the pram because they don't like something Kojima's doing?
I think Splinter Cell does seem to come up quite a lot with Metal Gear fans. I think mainly because it's the other big stealth franchise, and it is so diametrically opposed in a way to what MGS is all about. I think I sort of see the comparison maybe with classic Splinter Cell, but not so much with modern Splinter Cell, which has become very, very action-based, and isn't quite the pure trial-and-error stealth game that it used to be. Although maybe perhaps a little bit in the most recent incarnation. Metal Gear is always a bit more fun. It's more about kind of the technology and the story, obviously. Being an open world might require it to change a little bit, though. So
totally.
I can sort of see them trying to draw maybe a little bit from the Splinter Cell heritage to see if there's any kind of clues or influences they could pick up from how that works.
Yeah, I think I actually interviewed Kojima way before this, or just before this had been officially announced. It was still Moby Dick Studios that were sort of, forging ahead with it, and it was all sort of seeped in mystery. And the things that he was saying back then were, this is going to be the most controversial Metal Gear ever. We're prioritizing creativity over sales, and this real sort of creator-driven excitement from Kojima that we haven't actually heard from a while, because he keeps saying he wants to retire, and then he's never allowed to. We saw he had to come back in for Metal Gear Rising. He just wants to sort of chill out for a bit, maybe make another, FMV game or something like that, like Snatcher 2 or something. We don't know, but it's clear that he's sort of maybe had his time with Metal Gear, and I think he's taking the opportunity now to really just go nuts with it.
I mean, that's good news. I mean, I feel much the same. I've been concerned that he felt like he wanted to pull away from Metal Gear and pull away from Snake.
Yeah.
If he feels like the gloves are off and he can just have some fun with this again, that's good news for everybody.
In some regards, he is pulling a little bit away from the Snake that we know and recognize, with David Hayter obviously being asked to not come back and reprise his role, and 24's Keith Sutherland jumping in. What do we think of that? Are you cool with that? Or
I love David Hayter. He's the classic voice of Snake through the whole series. But changes aren't bad. We lost, a classic voice actor from Splinter Cell as well, going back to that franchise.
Yeah.
And that hasn't done it any harm. So the voice actor is important to any game. Maybe Kiefer Sutherland gives him a bit more range. I don't want to criticize David Hayes' performance because it was always excellent.
It was, yeah.
But maybe you get a little bit something different from Kiefer. He gives you a more kind of classic Hollywood training.
Yeah.
You can maybe do a few more things vocally that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
These have always been very cinematic games. Do you think that this is actually a sign that we're actually going to get an even crazier, more Hollywood experience from this Metal Gear? Obviously, it's going to be on the size and scope of an open world. He's going to have to change some integral parts of Metal Gear to get that to work.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, open world doesn't immediately bring to mind the idea of more cinematics. If anything, it suggests less cinematics.
Yeah, that's fair.
Less opportunity to interrupt the story if you're kind of developing it on your own and exploring freestyle kind of way. That said, a bigger world also implies maybe more opportunities for interactions, more opportunities for cinematics. So, yeah, no idea right now. It's very interestingly poised.
Yeah, totally. I think, if anything, this is going to be just another wonderful installment. I mean, I personally, there's not been a Metal Gear I've been disappointed by in a very long time, discounting Revengeance, because I've got no time for that. That was not cool. That was not cool at all. But I'm really up for this. Metal Gear's been one of my favorite franchises for a very long time, and I think it's always been a shame that Xbox owners have been sort of left out of the fun. So personally, I'm really excited to see what he brings to Xbox One and 360 next year.
Definitely. But yeah, the first Metal Gear to hit an Xbox since Metal Gear 2.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 2, I should say. A game that probably got an unfair rap at the time.
Totally.
I think it's much better than people remember it being.
The controls weren't great. They weren't mapped to the huge pad very well, is what I recall. But again, that's not the worst thing in the world. It looked beautiful. It looks so much better than the PS2 version as well.
And I think something worth mentioning again with Kojima Productions, they make fantastic looking games.
Yeah, I mean we haven't even mentioned it, but Fox Engine looks awesome.
This is in game. I mean that's the great thing. We're looking at in game stuff. I mean, when it cuts to real gameplay, you can just see there's not really any difference between cutscene and real gameplay. It's stunning looking.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the promise of last gen, or this current gen, was that we just have this seamless sort of death of cinematic cutscenes, and it never really came. And
they sort of crept. They disappeared for a while, and then they kind of crept back in again.
And it just looks wonderful. Everything about it, and I can't wait. So excited.
Excellent, Snake. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit. Kept you waiting, huh? Are being held in an old unused part of the compound. Get inside and head northeast.